is lost due to COVID-19 disruptions. How do you feel about that? Please call us via our WhatsApp line and let us hear your thoughts on that story. But pleased to say that the lovely Nomzamo Zondo is online. She's the Executive Director, Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa, and they have expressed their displeasure that no police officer, I repeat that no police officer has yet been charged for the murder of 34 striking Lonmin mine workers, which happened, obviously, as we all know, 9 years ago, referred to as the Marikana massacre. And obviously, the victims, the families of those victims have not had closure. They are still very deeply traumatized. And also the other thing that we've heard when we spoke to AMCU, Joseph Matunjwa, he's saying that up to now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has not gone to meet with the families to express condolences. And that is all they're asking for. So let's hear what Nomzamo has to say about it. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show. Have I outlined that precisely enough?
Can you please repeat that? Sorry, I didn't catch you.
The introduction. Is it?
No. It's completely accurate.
Okay.
And I think it's a concern for us. I think very early on in the issue of Marikana, it actually started being called Manikana because we're saying money is going everywhere, but to the victims. And that experience has really continued. And I want to speak specifically on the issue of criminal prosecution. So right now there is a team of 3 experienced advocates who are also committed to getting justice for the families who are working on this case. But those 3 advocates are also working on other cases. What that means is that they don't have enough time. So the NPA hasn't allocated sufficient time to work on justice for the Marikana families. Right now, they finalized one case where 4 police officers were acquitted, but then they are right now prosecuting for the killings that happened on the 13th of August. And the families have been following that and giving their support to the NPA. But the reality is that the family's biggest concern and biggest complaint is how the NPA has failed to allocate adequate resources to the issue of Marikana. If we understand how important Marikana is, then there would have been more resources, human resources and financial resources being allocated to this. On the other hand, we've seen how the state has poured money into defending the police. So all the 9 policemen that have been charged are being defended at state cost. So what you already see is an inequity of arm where the victims are getting little to nothing. And on the other side, the aggressors are getting all the resources poured to defend what they did in August 2012.
Okay.
And that's why we're here and we haven't seen any prosecution.
Absolutely. Okay. Let me just change direction slightly with this discussion. I do understand that up to now, I spoke to AMCU 2 days ago, and the picture that they painted almost sounded, and I don't think it was deliberate, it's just the conclusions that the layperson jumps to, was almost as if absolutely no justice, the families haven't had justice at all. Joseph Matunjwa also indicated that AMCU assisted about 20 odd families rebuilding homes for them. However, I also hear that the state has paid up to 70 million rands to 35 of these families. And beyond that, the state has also made a proposal that they'll pay a further 500,000 rand to each family, and that's just merely out of goodwill, to show goodwill to the families. But the families have rejected that amount of 500,000. They are wanting 1.5 million. Do you think that was a fair settlement by the state to the families?
So let me break the amounts down. Right, the state has paid 35 of the 37 families that it killed in August 2012. And they've paid to date 75,225,612 rand to date. The last payments were made in September 2019. That money is money that the minors would have earned in their lifetime if they had been killed by the police.
Mm-hmm.
So the state hasn't done any favors to the family.
Okay.
They've returned what was rightfully theirs. That's the first thing. So they've paid for 35 of the 37, meaning they still owe 2 families money that would have been in their pockets if they didn't kill their loved ones.
All right. Why are 2 families still not being settled as yet? What is the outstanding issues with those 2 families? Because clearly if they haven't been paid, they are undergoing a lot of financial hardship.
So the one family, there was issues in relation to legal capacity. One of the claimants is someone who suffers from mental disability. So there was investigation to whether or not he can litigate on his behalf. The other family, on his own behalf, the state has refused to compensate. And their justification for doing this is that this family member, Utobile Mpumza, was raised in a childhood household and was an orphan. And because when he then went on to work, he was repatriating money back to his siblings and their children, the state doesn't see a need to compensate them. As they say, there was no legal duty on him to support them. What they lose in that is the fact that he was financially supporting their family. And what they've done is they've refused the family restitution by trying to put them back in the position that they would have been had they not killed him.
That sounds very unfair, very especially here in South Africa, when we know that as far as a lot of homes are headed by children. Lots of children do not have parents. And in a situation like this, it does seem very unfair. But obviously, I imagine that legal argument will continue. Let's look at the legal costs. Who's paying for all of the legal costs for these families? I'm wondering if they are being paid out, and if they still have to carry legal fees, they're going to be left with absolutely nothing.
So Sari is representing the 36 family that represents for free, right? We are not asking the families to contribute to the legal cost.
Good on you.
This is because our funders give us funds to represent all the people that we represent.
Right.
And as a law clinic, we are not expecting any contribution from the families in relation to legal costs. Of course, the state must contribute to our legal costs. And to date, for instance, they have paid for the cost of psychologists that had to be seen by the family.
All right. I spoke to one of the, the wives of one of the deceased yesterday. She indicated, and I think there's a lot of gaps in all of the different stories that we're covering as far as this Marikana massacre is concerned. She indicated that initially, they did get psychosocial support, but it stopped now, and she feels that the kids are growing up and they're very, very traumatized, and she'd like for that to continue. Obviously, it seems that it's not continuing. What can be done for these families?
Look, so early on, we arranged psychosocial support from the Department of Social Development, and then while the commission was sitting, that was also being provided to the families who attended to the commission of inquiry. After that, one families have had to go to social workers' offices on their own where they can, and others actually had to seek medical assistance. I remember one of the widows was hospitalized for over 2 months because she couldn't deal with the trauma early on. So in terms of how to resolve that, again, the state had offered to say they will give their experts to provide the support. But we never saw them actually give us the contact details of who we can contact to make sure that support is given to the families, because part of the claim submitted by the families is for future medical expenses, and most of that relates to psychosocial support.
Okay, so SETI is working hard, continue working to get justice for these families. What about the 200 odd people that were injured? I understand, and I know that you are not dealing with this matter, but I'd just like your thoughts on it. There's another law firm I think it's advocate Andre Nkomo's law company that is actually dealing with the matter. 9 years later, people that were injured, people that may have lost limbs or whatever the case may be, probably totally disabled, that they can't even work any longer, physically and mentally, they haven't been compensated.
So what has happened is that the miners were arrested. Remember, the state arrested 279 miners.
Right.
On 16 August, accusing them of killing the 34 that the state had killed. Those miners are represented by Andrew Nkomo's law firm, and he received compensation on their behalf. I think the state explained about 251 of them were compensated.
Mm-hmm.
The balance have not been compensated. And of course, in terms of the injured, none of the injured have received compensation. This was confirmed again by Mr. Pandelani.
So how do they move forward? Because clearly they are in dire straits. I mean, they need to feed themselves. They need to feed their families. They obviously have mounting medical costs as well.
So this is the thing, in terms of the law, right? It is possible to offer what is called interim payments, where the state pays in an amount in the meantime while they determine. It was in the several interviews that Mr. Pandelani took, he explained how they are still computing or calculating how much money is due to the injured miners. But while they calculate, they should be able to pay an interim payment, which would allow the miners' lives to be improved in the meantime.
9 years later, sure. What a setback for these people.
Definitely. Look, I mean, I don't want to go back to all the points that we keep mentioning about how we've seen a state that didn't really want to address this issue head on. It never wanted to address even the group as the victims of the massacre. So I think we want to acknowledge the work done by Mr. Pandelani, at least to be able to come forward and address the nation on what they've done in relation to Marikana. But we need a lot more than that. We need a serious commitment to provide justice. And that's not only in relation to compensation, that's in relation to the apology. All of the victims' teams litigate for an apology. In the court, we asked the Minister of Police or the President to come and apologize to the families, the surviving miners and the injured arrested. But that did not happen. At the very least, if the state is serious about justice for Marikana, if they are, as they say, a caring government, the issue of the apology will be dealt with immediately.
Absolutely.
The issue of making sure there's resources that are going to the miners, the injured miners they haven't paid, they would make arrangements to make interim payments immediately. And then they would come and speak to us. I mean, this idea that Mpumuza's family shouldn't be compensated because he was raised by his siblings is absurd.
Absolutely.
And it's so backward in our country because people know that we work for our families, we don't only work for our nuclear families. Yes. We're in a country that is overwhelmingly African, where the obligations go beyond the people that people just consider it's just your parent, it's just your child. Mr. Mpumuza, when he died, he knew of that obligation and he met it on a monthly basis. Even at the time he was unemployed, he was sending money home to his siblings. For the state to then gun him down in cold blood in front of the whole nation and then come back and say, no, sorry for you. It doesn't say caring at all.
Finally, Nomzamo, why do you believe government are dragging their heels as far as the apology is concerned? Because if Cyril Ramaphosa meets with the family, spends an hour or two talking to them, sympathizing with them, comforting them, that matter will be done and dusted and people can and will move on. Why do you believe, why is there this reluctance to meet with the families?
So, Professor Noah was speaking at the commemoration, and he was speaking about how the state has refused to acknowledge that this was a massacre. And the reason why the families haven't received an apology is because the government is trying to escape writing into the official narrative that they've massacred the miners in Marikana. But they cannot escape from that. That's just a reality. We saw, all of us saw it on national television. They need to come out, and the key part of them repairing the damage they've caused is doing exactly that, acknowledging the massacre, apologizing to the families. And I think even for me, for someone who is interested in seeing a caring state, who is interested in seeing a state that is committed to human rights, that is committed to justice, that is committed to our own constitution, I feel like that's the least that they can do. That it's important for them to come up and say, here is the truth. The truth is we killed these people, and we are sorry for it.
Absolutely.
And this is what we are doing to remedy it.
Nomzamo Zondo, really nice hearing your perspective and how your organization, that is the Economic Rights Institute of South Africa, is representing these helpless people, these people that are still in such deep trauma. God bless and continue your amazing work.
Thank you so much.
8:36 exactly. This is News and Views on Salam Media.
Juicy Med Medicine